I never thought my own son would try to erase me from existence. The morning it happened, I was standing in my kitchen, the same kitchen where I'd baked birthday cakes for 40 years, where I'd taught both my boys to knead dough with their small hands, where my husband Thomas held me the night we almost lost the shop to bankruptcy. My son Ethan looked me in the eye that morning and said, "Mom, you're not well. We need to talk about your condition. I wasn't sick. I was 65 and sharp as the day I married. But he had papers, legal papers that said I was incompetent to manage my own life. That's when I understood. My son didn't want to help me. He wanted to take everything. But that was just the beginning of my plan. My name is Margaret Lane, and for 40 years, I ran the best bakery in Cedar Falls, Ohio. Lane's Family Bakery wasn't fancy. We didn't have marble counters or French pastries with names you couldn't pronounce. We had cinnamon rolls that people drove 3 towns over to buy. We had sourdough bread with a crust that cracked just right. We had birthday cakes that made children's eyes go wide. Thomas and I built that business with our own 4 hands. We'd wake at 4 in the morning, even on Sundays. He'd prep the ovens while I mixed the dough. By 6, the whole street smelled like butter and yeast. "Maggie," he used to say, running flour-dusted fingers through my hair. "This smell? This is what home is supposed to be." We had 2 sons. Ethan, our firstborn, was always ambitious. Even as a boy, he'd talk about expansion, profits, market share. Luke, our younger son, was the dreamer. He wanted to write novels, to tell stories that mattered. I loved them both. God help me, I loved them both the same. When Thomas died 2 years ago, something in me broke. Not my mind, my heart. He'd had a stroke right there in the kitchen, fell between the oven and the prep table. By the time the ambulance came, he was already gone. The doctors said it was quick. They said he didn't suffer. But I suffered. I suffered every single day after. Still, I got up every morning. I opened that shop. I baked his recipes. Because that's what you do when you love something. You keep going. If you've ever lost someone who made your world make sense, you know what I'm talking about. You know that emptiness that sits in your chest like a stone. After a year of grieving, I decided it was time. Time to think about the future. Time to decide what would happen to Lane's Family Bakery when I was gone. I called both my sons home for a family meeting. Ethan arrived in a Tesla. He wore a suit that probably cost more than our monthly flour budget. He'd made his money in commercial real estate, flipping properties in Columbus. He kissed my cheek and immediately started checking his phone. "Mom," he said, barely looking up. "I've got a conference call in an hour. Let's make this quick." Luke came on a Greyhound bus. He was living in Cleveland, working at a bookstore while he finished his novel. He hugged me tight and held on for a long moment. "I've missed you, Ma," he whispered. "The place smells just like I remember." We sat in the small office behind the kitchen, the same office where Thomas used to do the books, squinting at receipts through his reading glasses. I'd prepared a simple will with my lawyer, Howard Mitchell. He was an old friend, had handled our business paperwork for 30 years. "Boys," I said, folding my hands on the desk, "I'm not getting any younger. The bakery has been our family's heart for 4 decades. I want to leave it to both of you 50-50. You can run it together or sell it and split the proceeds. But I want you to make that decision together, as brothers." Luke's eyes got bright. "Ma, are you serious?" "I'd love to keep it going. Maybe expand the cookbook side. Do some local media." Ethan cut him off. "Mom, we need to talk about the real value here. This property alone is worth at least $400,000. The brand recognition, the recipes, the customer base, we're looking at $500,000 minimum. If we sold to a developer—" "I don't want to sell to a developer," I said firmly. "This is a bakery. It feeds people. It brings joy." Ethan's jaw tightened. "Mom, with all due respect, that's not a business strategy. That's sentiment." "Maybe sentiment is the whole point," Luke said quietly. The room got tense. Howard cleared his throat and started explaining the legal details. The will was simple, straightforward. When I passed, everything would be divided equally. "But Mom," Ethan said, leaning forward, "have you thought about what happens if you get sick? What if you can't make decisions anymore? Shouldn't there be a power of attorney?" Something in his tone made my stomach clench. "I'm healthy, Ethan. I don't need—" "But what if something happens? A stroke, like Dad, dementia? We should have protections in place." Howard looked uncomfortable. "Mrs. Lane is of perfectly sound mind." If she wants to designate someone for future medical decisions, that's her choice, but there's no urgency. Ethan smiled, the kind of smile that doesn't reach the eyes. Of course, I'm just thinking ahead, that's all. We signed the papers. I thought that was the end of it. I thought I'd done the right thing. I was so terribly wrong. 2 weeks later, I got a call from Howard. His voice was shaking. Margaret, I don't know how to tell you this. Ethan has filed a petition with the county court. He's claiming you're mentally incompetent. He's asking to be appointed as your legal guardian. The world tilted. What? He has a statement from a doctor I've never heard of. Someone named Dr. Philip Rosen. The document claims you're showing signs of dementia and early stage Alzheimer's. It says you're a danger to yourself. I couldn't breathe. Howard, I don't even know a Dr. Rosen. I've never been diagnosed with anything. I know, but he's filed it anyway. There's a hearing in 3 weeks. I hung up and sat in the dark office for a long time. The ovens hummed in the next room. The smell of fresh bread filled the air. My son was trying to erase me. And for what? Money? Control? Pride? I called Luke. He answered on the first ring. Ma? What's wrong? I told him everything. He went silent for a long time. I can't believe this, he finally said. I mean, Ethan's always been ruthless, but this is evil, Ma. I need you to come home, I whispered. I can't fight this alone. I'm on the next bus, he said. But even as I hung up, I knew the truth. Luke was a good son, a kind soul. But he wasn't a fighter. He didn't have money for lawyers. He didn't have Ethan's connections, his resources, his cold ambition. If I was going to survive this, I'd have to be smart. I'd have to be patient. And I'd have to remember something my mother once told me, back when I was a girl learning to bake. The best revenge is a dish that rises twice. The hearing was a nightmare. I sat in that cold courtroom in my best Sunday dress, my hands folded in my lap. Luke sat beside me, pale and nervous. Howard stood at our table with a stack of documents proving I was competent, healthy, and fully aware. Ethan sat across the aisle with a lawyer in a $2,000 suit. The judge was a tired-looking woman named Patricia Holloway. She'd been on the bench for 20 years, and her eyes had that weary look of someone who'd seen too many families destroy each other over money. Ethan's lawyer stood up first. Your Honor, this is a straightforward case of elder protection. Mrs. Margaret Lane is 65 years old. She recently lost her husband of 40 years. She's exhibiting clear signs of cognitive decline, memory loss, and impaired judgment. Dr. Philip Rosen, a board-certified psychiatrist, has evaluated her and determined that she is no longer capable of managing her financial affairs or making sound medical decisions. He slid a document across to the judge. I felt sick. I'd never met this Dr. Rosen, never sat in his office, never answered his questions. Howard stood up, his voice sharp. Your Honor, Mrs. Lane has never been examined by Dr. Rosen. This evaluation is fraudulent. Mrs. Lane is fully competent. She runs a successful business, manages all her own finances, and has no history of mental illness or cognitive impairment. The judge looked at me. Mrs. Lane, have you ever been treated for dementia or Alzheimer's disease? No, Your Honor, I said clearly. I've never even been diagnosed with it. I don't know who Dr. Rosen is. Ethan's lawyer smiled. Your Honor, that's precisely the problem. Patients with early dementia often lack insight into their condition. It's called anosognosia. They genuinely believe they're fine, even as they deteriorate. My stomach turned to ice. Furthermore, the lawyer continued, Mrs. Lane recently gave away her primary asset, a bakery worth over $500,000, without any financial planning or consultation. She divided it equally between two sons with vastly different financial literacy and business acumen. This is a clear sign of impaired judgment. That's not impaired judgment, Howard shot back. That's a mother treating her children equally. It's called fairness. The judge held up a hand. I'll hear from the petitioner. Mr. Lane, why are you seeking guardianship over your mother? Ethan stood up. He looked so sincere, so concerned. If I hadn't known better, I'd have believed him myself. Your Honor, I love my mother. She's the strongest woman I know. But since my father died, she's been different. She forgets appointments. She leaves the oven on. Last month, she called me at 2 a.m. asking where Dad was. She'd forgotten he passed away. Lies. All lies. My hands started shaking. I'm scared for her safety, Ethan continued, his voice breaking just a little. I'm scared she'll hurt herself. Or worse. I don't want to take anything from her. I just want to protect her. Luke stood up suddenly. That's not true, Ethan, and you know it. The judge banged her gavel. Mr. Lane, please sit down. I'm sorry, Your Honor, but my brother is lying. Our mom is fine. He's doing this because he wants control of the bakery. He's wanted it for years. Ethan's face went hard. Luke, you don't understand business. You've never understood responsibility. Mom needs someone who can actually manage her affairs. She can manage her own affairs, Luke said, his voice rising. You're just trying to steal from her. The judge banged the gavel again. Enough! Both of you, sit down. We sat. The judge looked at the papers in front of her for a long time. Too long. This is a serious accusation, she finally said. Mrs. Lane, I'm going to order an independent psychiatric evaluation. You'll be examined by a court-appointed doctor within the next 2 weeks. If they find you competent, this petition will be dismissed. If not, we'll revisit the guardianship question. My chest loosened a little. That was fair. That was reasonable. But then the judge said something that shattered me. In the meantime, to protect Mrs. Lane's assets, I'm issuing a temporary restraining order. Mrs. Lane, you are not to make any major financial decisions, sell any property, or transfer any assets until the evaluation is complete. Your business accounts will be frozen. Your Honor, Howard protested, that's going to shut down her bakery. She can't pay suppliers or employees without access to her accounts. The judge looked pained. I'm sorry, Mr. Mitchell, but if Mrs. Lane truly is impaired, we can't risk her assets being dissipated before the evaluation. Just like that, my bakery was paralyzed. I couldn't buy flour, couldn't pay rent, couldn't make payroll. Ethan had won the first round. If you've ever been betrayed by someone you love, this story is for you. Because betrayal doesn't come from strangers. It comes from the people who know exactly where to cut. The next 2 weeks were hell. I couldn't run the bakery, couldn't pay my 3 employees, all of whom had been with me for over a decade. Maria, the morning baker, Carlos, the prep cook, and sweet Jenny, who worked the counter and knew every customer by name. I had to close the doors. The sign I hung said, "Closed until further notice." It felt like a tombstone. Luke stayed with me. He slept on the couch in the apartment above the shop, the same apartment where we'd raised him and Ethan. He made me tea. He told me it would be okay, but I could see the worry in his eyes. The court-appointed psychiatrist came to my home on a rainy Tuesday. Her name was Dr. Ellen Cho, and she was kind but thorough. She asked me questions for 3 hours, memory tests, logic puzzles, questions about my daily routine, my finances, my medical history. Mrs. Lane, she said gently, do you know why you're here? Because my son wants to steal my life's work, I said. She wrote something in her notebook. How does that make you feel? Like I raised a monster. More writing. At the end, she packed up her folders and gave me a small smile. Mrs. Lane, for what it's worth, you seem perfectly competent to me. My report will reflect that. I wanted to cry with relief. Thank you. But I have to warn you, she said quietly. These family cases can get very ugly. Even if you win, the damage is often permanent. She had no idea how right she was. 2 days later, I got the call from Howard. Dr. Cho's report had been submitted. She'd found me fully competent, with no signs of dementia or cognitive decline. The judge dismissed Ethan's petition. I'd won. Except I hadn't. Not really. Because while I was fighting in court, Ethan had been busy. He'd gone to my suppliers and told them I was sick, that the bakery would be closing permanently. He'd contacted my landlord and offered to buy out my lease. He'd even approached my employees with severance packages, making sure they'd find work elsewhere. By the time the court cleared my name, there was nothing left to clear it for. The bakery was destroyed. And Ethan? Ethan filed for a business license under a new name, Lane's Modern Bakery. He was going to open his own shop, using my recipes, using my name, using everything I'd built. I stood in the empty bakery that night, the lights all off, the ovens cold for the first time in 40 years. Luke found me there, sitting on the floor with my back against the counter. Ma, he said softly, we'll figure this out. How? I whispered. He's taken everything. We'll rebuild. We'll start over. I looked up at him, my sweet, naive son. Luke, I'm 65 years old. I don't have the energy to start over. He sat down beside me. So what do we do? I didn't answer right away. Because in that moment, in that dark kitchen, something inside me shifted. I thought about Thomas, about how he'd never quit, never surrendered, even when the bills piled up and the bank threatened foreclosure. I thought about my mother, who'd survived the depression by learning to make bread from almost nothing. I thought about every woman who'd ever been told she was too old, too tired, too broken to fight back. And I made a decision. We don't rebuild, I said quietly. We take it back. Luke looked at me confused. What do you mean? I stood up, brushing flour dust from my dress. I mean, your brother thinks I'm weak. He thinks I'll just fade away, but he's forgotten something. What's that? I smiled. It wasn't a kind smile. I know every secret of that business. Every corner we cut, every handshake deal, every code violation we fixed with cash and a prayer. Your brother wants to play dirty? Fine, but he's forgotten who taught him the game. I walked to the office and opened the filing cabinet. Inside were 40 years of records, receipts, contracts, letters, everything. I pulled out a folder and held it up. This is how we make him pay. Luke looked scared. Mom, what are you planning? I met his eyes. I'm planning to teach him that you don't steal from the woman who taught you everything you know. And that night, as I sat at the kitchen table going through decades of paperwork, I felt something I hadn't felt in months. Power. Because Ethan had made one critical mistake. He'd assumed that because I was old, I was helpless. He was about to learn otherwise. 6 months passed. 6 months of silence. 6 months of seeming defeat. I moved into a small apartment across town. The building was old, with thin walls and drafty windows. Every morning I'd wake up and for a moment I'd forget. Then I'd remember that I had nowhere to go, no ovens to preheat, no dough to knead. Luke had gone back to Cleveland. He needed to work. He called me every Sunday, his voice tight with worry. Ma, are you eating enough? Are you okay? I'm fine, sweetheart, I'd say. And it wasn't entirely a lie, because while everyone thought I was fading away in that tiny apartment, I was working. Ethan's new bakery, Lane's Modern Bakery, had opened with fanfare. He'd renovated the old Carson building downtown, the one with the big glass windows and exposed brick. It looked nothing like our shop, all minimalist design, Edison bulbs, industrial chic. He hired young bakers from culinary school. He put fancy coffee drinks on the menu. He charged $8 for a croissant that cost him 50 cents to make. The local paper did a feature on him. Cedar Falls native brings artisan baking home. There was a photo of Ethan in a designer apron, smiling at the camera, holding up one of my cinnamon rolls. Except he called it his cinnamon roll, his recipe, his creation. I read that article sitting alone in my apartment. My hands shook so badly I could barely hold the paper. But I didn't cry. Not anymore. I cut out the article and pinned it to my wall, a reminder, a promise to myself. Then, one Tuesday morning in late October, everything changed. I found a letter in my mailbox, plain white envelope, no return address. My name and address were written in careful block letters. I opened it with trembling fingers. Inside was a single sheet of paper. Mrs. Lane, I worked for you for 8 years. You treated me with respect and dignity. Your son is using your recipes and claiming them as his own. He's also cutting corners on ingredients and lying to customers about what's in the food. If you want to know more, meet me at the Oak Street Diner on Thursday at noon. Come alone. Carlos, my prep cook. The man who'd come to this country with nothing and worked his way up from dishwasher to head baker. The man whose daughter's quinceañera I'd attended, whose family I'd fed when times were hard. My heart started pounding. Thursday couldn't come fast enough. I arrived at the diner at 11:45. I sat in a corner booth where I could see the door. My coffee went cold as I waited. At exactly noon, Carlos walked in. He'd lost weight. His face looked drawn, tired. He saw me and his eyes filled with tears. He slid into the booth across from me. Mrs. Lane, I'm so sorry. I should have come to you sooner. It's okay, Carlos. You're here now. He pulled a manila folder from his jacket and pushed it across the table. Mrs. Lane, I need you to know something. When your bakery closed, I didn't have a choice. I have 3 kids. I needed work. When Mr. Ethan offered me a job, I took it. I understand. But what he's doing, Mrs. Lane, it's wrong. It's all wrong. I opened the folder. Inside were dozens of documents, invoices, receipts, emails, photos. What am I looking at? Carlos leaned forward, his voice low. He tells customers everything is organic, locally sourced. But look at these invoices. He's buying the cheapest flour from a discount warehouse in Michigan. The butter isn't butter, it's margarine. The eggs come from factory farms, not local farmers like he claims. My stomach turned as I flipped through the pages. And the recipes, Carlos continued. He's using your recipes exactly. Not modified, not improved, exactly as you wrote them. But he tells everyone they're his family recipes that he modernized. I found a photocopy of one of my recipe cards. My handwriting, my measurements, my notes in the margins about oven temperature and rising time. How did you get this? He keeps them in his office. I made copies. Carlos looked ashamed. I know it's risky. I could lose my job. But Mrs. Lane, you gave me my start. You believed in me when no one else would. I can't watch him destroy what you built and say nothing. I reached across the table and squeezed his hand. Thank you, Carlos. This takes courage. There's more, he said. He's planning to franchise. He's meeting with investors next month. If he succeeds, there will be Lane's modern bakery shops all over Ohio, all using your recipes, all lying to customers, all making him rich while you have nothing. The anger that rose in me was white hot and clear. Carlos, if you help me stop him, you'll lose your job. He nodded. I know, but some things are more important than a paycheck. My daughter asked me last week why I don't work for you anymore. I didn't know what to tell her. Tell her you're working for what's right, I said. Over the next hour, Carlos told me everything. The corners Ethan was cutting, the health code violations he was hiding, the investors he was lying to about profit margins and ingredient costs. When he left, I sat in that diner for a long time, staring at the folder. I wasn't alone anymore, and I had ammunition. If you've ever felt powerless against someone who seemed untouchable, keep listening, because this is where the tide begins to turn. 3 days later, I got another letter. This one came to my apartment, slipped under the door while I was out buying groceries. Mrs. Lane, my name is Bethany Wu. I'm a reporter for the Cedar Falls Gazette. I've been investigating your son's bakery because something doesn't add up. I'd like to hear your side of the story. If you're willing to talk, call me. There was a phone number at the bottom. I stared at that letter for an hour before I picked up the phone. Bethany answered on the second ring. Hello? This is Margaret Lane. A pause. Then, Mrs. Lane. Thank you for calling. I wasn't sure you would. Why are you investigating my son? Because I'm a journalist, and I don't believe in fairy tales. Your son's story is too perfect. Local boy returns home, opens artisan bakery, becomes overnight success. That doesn't happen without shortcuts. What do you want from me? The truth, she said simply. I've read the court documents from the guardianship case. I've talked to former employees. I've looked at business permits and health inspections. Something's wrong, but I need someone on record. I need you. If I talk to you, he'll know. He'll come after me. Mrs. Lane, Bethany said gently, he already came after you. He tried to have you declared incompetent. He stole your business. What more can he do? She was right. Come to my apartment, I said, tomorrow evening. She arrived at 7 sharp, carrying a recorder and a notebook. She was younger than I expected, maybe 30, with sharp eyes and a firm handshake. We sat at my small kitchen table. I made tea, and then I told her everything. The guardianship petition, the frozen accounts, the destroyed bakery, the stolen recipes. She listened, taking notes, her expression getting harder with each detail. Mrs. Lane, this is Pulitzer-level family betrayal, she said when I finished. But I need proof. Court documents, recipes, invoices, anything that shows he's lying about his business practices. I pulled out the folder Carlos had given me. Will this do? Her eyes went wide as she flipped through it. Oh my God, this is fraud, clear documented fraud. Can you use it? I can't publish stolen documents, but I can use them to guide my investigation. I can verify the information independently, interview suppliers, check business licenses, cross reference claims. She looked up at me. Mrs. Lane, if I publish this story, it's going to be a firestorm. Your son could face criminal charges. His business will be destroyed. Are you prepared for that? I thought about Thomas, about 40 years of 4 a.m. mornings and flour-dusted hands, about teaching two little boys to knead dough and shape loaves, about one of those boys trying to erase me from existence. I'm prepared, I said. Bethany smiled. Good. Because your son is being honored next month with the Cedar Falls Small Business Excellence Award. The ceremony is public, press is invited, my heart started pounding. What are you thinking? I'm thinking that award ceremonies are the perfect place for inconvenient truths to come to light. She reached across the table and squeezed my hand. Let me tell you why I care about this so much. My grandmother owned a restaurant in San Francisco. When she got sick, my uncle convinced her to sign it over to him. He promised to take care of her, to keep the restaurant in the family. Instead, he sold it to a developer the day after she died. She never knew, but I knew, and I've regretted not fighting for her ever since. Her eyes were bright with tears. Let me fight for you, Mrs. Lane. Let me make sure your grandmother's recipes, your 40 years of work, your husband's memory, all of it, gets the justice it deserves. I started crying then. For the first time in months, I let myself cry. Thank you, I whispered. Don't thank me yet, she said. We've got work to do. Over the next 3 weeks, Bethany worked like a woman possessed. She interviewed former employees. She got statements from suppliers confirming that Ethan was buying cheap ingredients while advertising organic. She found customers who'd gotten sick from underbaked goods. She traced the recipes back to me through old bakery newsletters and cookbook submissions. She called me every few days with updates. Each call made me feel stronger. Mrs. Lane, I've got 3 suppliers on record saying he lied about sourcing. Mrs. Lane, I found your original recipes in the county archives, perfect match to what he's using. Mrs. Lane, his health inspection records show 2 violations he paid to have buried. Piece by piece, she was building a case. And then, 2 weeks before the awards ceremony, she published her first article. The headline read, Lane's Modern Bakery, Innovation or Imitation. The article was carefully written, journalistic. It raised questions without making direct accusations. It noted that the recipes seemed identical to those from the old Lane's family bakery. It mentioned that several former employees had raised concerns about ingredient quality and business practices. It quoted me once, "Those recipes were developed over 40 years. They're part of my family's history. I'm proud to see them still bringing joy to people." The article went viral in our small town. Suddenly, everyone was talking. Social media exploded with debates. Some defended Ethan, saying he'd modernized outdated recipes. Others were suspicious, asking questions, demanding answers. The Chamber of Commerce held an emergency meeting to discuss whether the award should still be given. They decided it would. But they invited me to attend. That's when Ethan called me for the first time in 6 months. "Mom." His voice was tight, controlled. "We need to talk. I have nothing to say to you. That article is slander. You know those recipes are family recipes. I have every right to use them. You have no right to claim you created them. You have no right to build a business on my work and act like it's yours." "Mom, you're being ridiculous. I was going to take care of you. I was going to make sure you were comfortable. In a nursing home? While you got rich off my life's work?" Silence on the line. "Ethan," I said, my voice shaking, "I gave you life. I taught you everything you know about baking. I loved you more than anything, and you tried to have me declared incompetent so you could take everything. That's not business. That's betrayal. Mom," I hung up. My hands were shaking, but not with fear, with rage, with power, with purpose. The award ceremony was in 5 days, and I was ready. The morning of the ceremony, I woke before dawn. Old habits. Even after 6 months away from the bakery, my body still thought it was time to work. I lay in bed, watching light creep through the thin curtains of my apartment. My heart was pounding. Today was the day. Luke had arrived the night before. He'd taken time off from his bookstore job, borrowed money for the bus ticket. He slept on my couch just like he had during the guardianship hearing. He made me breakfast, toast and eggs. His hands shook as he set the plate in front of me. Ma, are you sure about this? I've never been more sure of anything. Ethan's going to fight back. He's going to say terrible things. He might even try to have you arrested for defamation or something. Let him try. Ma, I took his hand. Luke, I know you love your brother. Part of you probably always will. But what he did to me, what he's doing to our family's legacy, it's wrong. And someone has to stop him. I know, he whispered. I just wish it didn't have to be you. Who else is there? I said gently. I'm the only one who knows the whole truth. Bethany picked us up at 5. The ceremony started at 7, but she wanted to get there early to make sure we had good seats, to coordinate with the photographer she'd brought. She looked at me as I got in the car. Mrs. Lane, are you ready? I'm ready. Good. Because I just got confirmation. They're still giving him the award, but I also got confirmation that 3 news crews from Columbus will be there. This isn't going to be a small-town story anymore. My stomach flipped. National news? Regional, at least. This kind of family drama, the fraud allegations, the David versus Goliath angle. It's everything news producers dream of. We arrived at the Cedar Falls Community Center at 5:30. The room was already being set up. Rows of chairs, a stage with a podium, a banner that read Excellence in Small Business. People started arriving at 6. I recognized so many faces. Customers who used to come into my bakery every Saturday. Neighbors who'd watched my boys grow up. Business owners I'd known for decades. Some of them saw me and looked away, uncomfortable. Others smiled sadly, pity in their eyes. A few came over to hug me. Margaret, we've missed you. Margaret, I'm so sorry about what happened. Margaret, your bakery was the heart of this town. Each word was a small kindness, a reminder that I wasn't just fighting for myself. I was fighting for everyone who'd ever been erased, overlooked, stolen from. Ethan arrived at 6:45. He walked in like he owned the place, wearing an expensive suit, his hair perfectly styled. He had investors with him, men in suits, women with designer handbags. He saw me sitting in the 3rd row and his face went pale. For just a moment our eyes met. I saw fear there, and anger, and something else. Something that might have been regret, but then his expression hardened. He looked away and kept walking. The ceremony began at 7 sharp. The mayor gave a speech about economic development. The president of the Chamber of Commerce talked about the importance of supporting local business. There were awards for Best Retail Shop, Best Service Company, Best Restaurant, and then came the main award, Small Business Excellence. This year, the Chamber president said, we're honoring someone who has brought innovation and artistry back to our community. Someone who saw potential where others saw only nostalgia. Please welcome the founder of Lane's Modern Bakery, Ethan Lane. Applause filled the room. Ethan walked to the stage, smiling, waving. The president handed him a crystal plaque. Congratulations, Ethan. Your bakery has become a destination for people all over the region. You've created jobs, you've invested in our downtown, and you've brought a taste of something special to Cedar Falls. Ethan stepped to the microphone. He cleared his throat, smiling at the crowd. Thank you. This means the world to me. I grew up in a bakery, watching my parents work every single day. My father and mother taught me that baking isn't just about food, it's about community. It's about bringing people together over something simple and beautiful. My jaw clenched. He was using Thomas's words my husband had said 1,000 times. I've taken the traditional recipes I learned as a child, Ethan continued, and I've elevated them. I've sourced organic ingredients from local farms. I've trained the next generation of bakers. I've created a space where people can gather and feel at home. More applause. People were eating it up. Lane's Modern Bakery isn't just my dream. It's a tribute to my parents' legacy. I stood up. The room went silent. Every eye turned to me. Luke grabbed my arm. Ma. I pulled free and walked down the aisle. My legs felt steady, strong. I climbed the steps to the stage. Ethan's smile froze. Mom, what are you doing? I walked right up to him and took the microphone from his hand. The chamber president looked panicked. Mrs. Lane, this isn't really appropriate. Neither is fraud, I said clearly. But here we are. Gasps rippled through the crowd. I turned to face the audience, hundreds of faces staring at me. I saw Bethany in the back, her phone up, recording. I saw news cameras suddenly focusing on the stage. My name is Margaret Lane, I said, and I need to tell you the truth about those recipes. Ethan moved toward me. Mom, please don't do this. Why? I turned to him. Because it will embarrass you? Because people will know what you did? His face was red. This is a private family matter. You made it public when you tried to have me declared incompetent in a court of law. You made it public when you stole my business and my recipes and my name. I turned back to the crowd. My voice was shaking but clear. 40 years ago, my husband, Thomas, and I opened Lane's Family Bakery. We built it from nothing. We developed those recipes together, testing them hundreds of times until they were perfect. We raised 2 sons in that bakery. We taught them everything we knew. I could see people leaning forward, listening. When Thomas died 2 years ago, I decided to leave the bakery to both my sons equally. But my oldest son wanted more. He filed a petition claiming I had dementia. He tried to have me declared mentally incompetent so he could take control of my assets. Murmurs of shock spread through the room. The court found me perfectly competent. But by then it was too late. My bakery was destroyed, and my son took everything we'd built and opened his own shop. I pulled a yellowed piece of paper from my purse. This is the original recipe for Lane's cinnamon rolls. It was written by my grandmother in 1943. She gave it to my mother, who gave it to me. This is my handwriting, my measurements, my notes. I held it up so everyone could see. Now look at the recipe my son is using. Bethany stood up, holding a printed menu from Lane's Modern Bakery. She'd highlighted the description of the cinnamon rolls. Word for word, measurement for measurement. He didn't create anything. He took what I built and claimed it as his own. Ethan grabbed for the microphone. Those are family recipes. I have every right. You have no right to lie about creating them. You have no right to build a business on my work and pretend it's yours. The room erupted. People were shouting, standing up. The news cameras were pushing forward. And there's more, I said, my voice rising over the noise. My son tells you his ingredients are organic, locally sourced. But that's a lie, too. I pulled out the folder Carlos had given me. These are invoices from his suppliers. Cheap flour from a warehouse in Michigan. Margarine instead of butter. Factory-farmed eggs, not local like he claims. I threw the papers on the stage. They scattered at Ethan's feet. He's not bringing artisan baking to Cedar Falls. He's bringing fraud. He's lying to every single person who walks through his door. Ethan's face had gone from red to white. You can't prove any of this. Actually, said a voice from the back, she can. Everyone turned. A man in a gray suit walked down the aisle holding up a badge. I'm Detective Marcus Webb with the Cedar Falls Police Department. We've been investigating Lane's Modern Bakery for the past month based on information we received about fraudulent business practices and health code violations. My heart was pounding so hard I thought it might burst. Mr. Lane, the detective continued, we've confirmed that your business has been systematically misrepresenting its ingredients to consumers. We've also uncovered evidence of tax evasion and labor law violations. You're going to need to come with us. The room exploded. People were shouting, cameras were flashing, reporters were rushing forward. Ethan looked at me, his eyes desperate. Mom, please. I'm your son. Don't let them do this. For a moment, looking at him, I saw the little boy he used to be, the one who'd cry when he scraped his knee, the one who'd hug me tight and say, I love you, Mama. But then I remembered the court hearing, the frozen accounts, the empty bakery, the 6 months of humiliation and silence. You stopped being my son, I said quietly, the day you tried to erase me. The detective led him away in handcuffs. His investors scattered like cockroaches when the light comes on. I stood on that stage, microphone in hand, and looked out at the crowd. I want you all to know something, I said. This wasn't about revenge. This was about truth. Because when someone steals your life's work, when they try to make you disappear, staying silent isn't kindness. It's surrender. I set the microphone down and walked off the stage. Luke was waiting at the bottom of the steps. He wrapped his arms around me and I finally let myself cry. "You did it, Ma," he whispered. "You actually did it." "No," I said. "We did it. Carlos did it. Bethany did it. Everyone who believed me when I had nothing left." That night, the story was on every news channel in Ohio. Local baker exposes son's fraudulent business. Family feud erupts over stolen recipes. Woman fights back against son who tried to erase her. My phone rang off the hook. Reporters, old friends, strangers wanting to hear my story. I unplugged it and sat in the dark, exhausted. Bethany came by with Chinese food. We ate in silence for a while. "How do you feel?" she finally asked. "Empty," I admitted. "I thought I'd feel victorious. But I just feel sad." "That's because you're a good person," she said. "Bad people don't feel guilty about destroying their enemies." "He's my son," I whispered. "I carried him for 9 months. I taught him to walk, to read, to bake, and now he's going to jail." Bethany squeezed my hand. "He made his choices. You just made sure he faced the consequences." Over the next week, everything unraveled for Ethan. His investors pulled out immediately. His bakery closed within 3 days. His franchise deals evaporated. The health department shut down his kitchen pending a full investigation. He was charged with fraud, tax evasion, and falsifying business documents. His bail was set at $50,000. I heard through the grapevine that he had to sell his Tesla to make it. Part of me felt sick about it. Part of me felt nothing at all. But the strangest part? The way people started treating me, like a hero. Strangers stopped me on the street to shake my hand. I got letters from women all over the country telling me their own stories of being erased, overlooked, stolen from. "You gave me courage," one letter said. "My son stole my house. I thought I had to just accept it, but you showed me I could fight back." Another, "I'm 72 and my daughter tried to have me put in a home so she could take my savings. Your story inspired me to hire a lawyer, one after another after another." I realized something then. This wasn't just about me and Ethan, it was about every older person who'd been told they were too weak, too confused, too irrelevant to fight back. It was about proving that age doesn't mean helpless. If you've ever felt invisible because of your age, because of your gender, because someone more powerful decided you didn't matter, I hope this story reminds you of something important. You are not powerless. You are not forgotten. And the truth is always worth fighting for. The trial happened 3 months later. I sat in the courtroom every single day, in the same seat in the third row. Luke sat beside me. Sometimes Bethany joined us. Ethan's lawyer tried to paint me as a vindictive mother who couldn't accept that her son had succeeded where she'd failed. They brought in business consultants who talked about innovation and modernization. But the prosecutor had the evidence, the invoices, the employee testimony, the health code violations, the tax documents, and he had me. I took the stand on the 4th day of the trial. The prosecutor was a stern woman named Linda Chen. She asked me to tell my story from the beginning. I talked about Thomas, about building the bakery from nothing, about 40 years of 4 a.m. mornings and flour-dusted hands. I talked about the guardianship petition, about the frozen accounts, about watching my life's work crumble while my son built his empire on top of it. "Mrs. Lane," Linda said gently, "why didn't you just let it go? You'd won the guardianship case. You could have walked away." I looked at Ethan. He was staring at the table, his jaw tight. "Because it wasn't just about me," I said. "It was about everyone who'd ever trusted him. Every customer who thought they were buying organic ingredients. Every employee who thought they were working for an honest business. Every person in Cedar Falls who believed in what he was building." "And what was he building?" "A lie," I said simply. "He was building a beautiful, expensive lie. And someone had to tell the truth." Ethan's lawyer cross-examined me. He was aggressive, trying to make me seem bitter, jealous, mentally unstable. "Mrs. Lane, isn't it true that you resented your son's success?" "No, I resented his theft." "Isn't it true that you never wanted him to modernize the recipes?" "I never wanted him to claim he'd created them." "Isn't it true that you're doing this because you can't accept that your son is a better baker than you?" I looked at the lawyer for a long moment, then I smiled. "My son," I said quietly, "learned everything he knows from me. Every technique, every recipe, every trick. He's not a better baker, he's an echo, and echoes don't get to pretend they're the original voice. The courtroom was silent. On the seventh day, the jury deliberated for 4 hours. They found Ethan guilty on all counts: fraud, tax evasion, falsifying business documents. The judge sentenced him to 18 months in prison, suspended to community service. 500 hours. He'd also have to pay restitution to everyone he'd defrauded, plus fines totaling nearly $200,000. He'd lost everything. As they let him out, he looked at me one last time. His eyes were red, his face was hollow. "Mom," he mouthed. I looked away. Luke walked me out of the courthouse. Reporters swarmed us, shouting questions. "Mrs. Lane, how do you feel? Mrs. Lane, are you going to reopen your bakery? Mrs. Lane, do you forgive your son?" I stopped on the steps. Luke tried to pull me along, but I shook my head. I turned to face the cameras. "I don't know if I forgive him yet," I said honestly. "Maybe someday. But right now, I'm just tired. Tired of fighting. Tired of being angry. I want to move forward." "Will you reopen the bakery?" a reporter called out. I thought about that dark, empty kitchen, the cold ovens, the silence. "I don't know," I said. "But if I do, it won't be about erasing what Ethan did. It'll be about remembering what Thomas and I built together. It'll be about honoring 40 years of work with truth, not lies." That night, Luke and I went to the old bakery. It had been empty for almost a year. The windows were dusty. The door was locked with a chain. Howard, my lawyer, had been working on getting the lease back in my name. The landlord, once he'd learned the truth about what Ethan had done, had been apologetic, helpful even. Luke had a key. We went inside. The place smelled stale. There were dust sheets over the counters. The ovens were silent and cold. But underneath it all, I could still smell it, that faint, ghost-like scent of bread and butter and home. "Ma," Luke said softly, "what are you thinking?" I walked to the old prep counter. I ran my hand over the worn wood. How many thousands of loaves had been shaped on this surface? "I'm thinking about your father," I said. "About the night we almost lost this place to bankruptcy. We were in so much debt. The bank was going to foreclose. I wanted to give up." "What did Dad say?" I smiled, tears in my eyes. He said, "Maggie, bread rises twice. First in the bowl, then in the oven. Sometimes we need to fall before we can rise again." Luke came and stood beside me. "Do you want to try? To rise again?" I thought about it, really thought about it. I was 66 years old. I was tired. I was broke. My son was going to prison because of me. But I also thought about the letters I'd received, the women who'd said I'd inspired them, the people who'd told me they missed my cinnamon rolls, my sourdough, my birthday cakes. "Yes," I said, "I want to try." "Then I'll help you," Luke said. I'll quit my job in Cleveland. I'll come home. We'll do this together." "Luke, you have your writing." "Ma, I can write anywhere, but I only have one mother, one family legacy. Let me help you rebuild it." I hugged him tight, this sweet son of mine who'd never stopped believing in me. "Okay," I whispered, "let's bring it back." 1 year later. I stood in the kitchen of Second Rise Bakery at 4:30 in the morning, my hands deep in a bowl of dough. The name had been Luke's idea. "Second Rise," he'd said, "because everyone deserves a second chance, even us." We'd reopened slowly. It took months to get the ovens working again, to pass inspections, to rebuild relationships with suppliers. Carlos came back to work for us. So did Maria. Jenny returned to run the counter. We kept the recipes the same. Why change perfection? But we did change some things. We started a scholarship fund for young people who wanted to learn baking. We partnered with the local food bank, donating unsold bread every evening. We hired people who needed second chances: former addicts, ex-convicts, immigrants. The bakery became more than just a business. It became a community. Luke ran the business side while finishing his novel. He was good at it, detail-oriented but kind. He treated employees the way I'd taught him, with respect and dignity. We didn't get rich, but we paid our bills. We fed our neighbors. We woke up every morning with purpose. And Ethan? He was serving his community service at the Cedar Falls Soup Kitchen, 500 hours. Every Saturday, he showed up in his court-mandated vest and served meals to people who had nothing. I saw him there once. I'd gone to drop off our weekly bread donation. He was at the counter, ladling soup into bowls. He looked thinner, older. His expensive clothes were gone, replaced by jeans and an old t-shirt. He saw me and froze. We stared at each other across that crowded room. I saw shame in his eyes, and something else, something that might have been understanding. I nodded at him, just once. He nodded back. We didn't speak. We weren't ready for that yet. Maybe we never would be. But it was a start. Some betrayals cut too deep to heal completely. Some relationships can never be what they were. And that's okay. That's part of growing up, even when you're 66 years old. You learn that forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting. It doesn't mean pretending nothing happened. It just means deciding that the anger isn't worth carrying anymore. I'm not there yet, but I'm working on it. Just like bread, some things need time to rise properly. This morning, like every morning, I opened the doors at 6. The first customer was old Mrs. Henderson from down the street. She'd been coming to our bakery for 35 years. "Margaret," she said, tears in her eyes, "I'm so glad you're back. I've missed your cinnamon rolls so much." "I've missed making them for you," I said. She bought a dozen. For her grandchildren, she said. After she left, I stood at the counter and looked around the bakery. The morning light was streaming through the windows. The smell of fresh bread filled the air. The ovens hummed with life. Luke emerged from the back, flour in his hair, grinning. "Ma, the sourdough is perfect, just like Dad used to make it." I smiled. "He'd be proud of us." "He'd be proud of you," Luke said. "For fighting, for surviving, for rising again." Maybe he was right. I thought about everything that had happened, the betrayal, the courtroom battles, the empty months, the slow, painful rebuilding. And I realized something. I wasn't the same woman I'd been 2 years ago. That Margaret had been comfortable, complacent, soft around the edges. She'd believed that if you were kind and fair, people would treat you the same way. This Margaret knew better. This Margaret understood that sometimes you have to fight for what's yours. That age doesn't mean powerless. That being erased is only permanent if you let it be. I'd lost my husband. I'd lost my business. I'd lost my son in a way that hurt worse than death. But I'd found myself again. And in the end, that was worth everything. As the morning rush began, as customers filled the shop and the cash register dinged, and the smell of bread and coffee and community filled the air, I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time. Peace. Not happiness exactly. Not yet. But peace. The knowledge that I'd done what was right, that I'd stood up for myself when everyone expected me to fade away, that I'd proven you could fall and still rise again. Bread rises twice, first in the bowl, then in the oven. Sometimes we need to fall before we can rise again. Thomas was right about that. He was right about everything. I picked up a tray of fresh cinnamon rolls and carried them to the display case. They were perfect, golden brown, the icing dripping down the sides just right, the smell that had defined my life for 40 years. "These smell amazing, Mrs. Lane," Jenny said from the counter. "They should," I said, smiling. "They're the same recipe my grandmother used in 1943, the same recipe I've been making for 4 decades, the same recipe that started all of this." I placed them in the case and stepped back to look at them. "But you know what?" I said quietly. "They taste better now." "Why's that?" Jenny asked. I thought about it, about everything I'd been through, everything I'd lost and found and built again. "Because now they're made with something more than just flour and butter and cinnamon," I said. "They're made with truth, with justice, with the knowledge that I fought for them and won." Jenny smiled. "That's a good ingredient." "The best," I agreed. That day, justice was finally served, not with violence, not with cruelty, but with truth, courage, and the simple act of refusing to disappear. I'm 67 now. My hands shake sometimes when I knead dough. My back hurts after a long shift. I'm not as young as I used to be, but I'm still here, still baking, still feeding my community, still proving that you're never too old to fight for what's right. And every time someone walks through the doors of Second Rise Bakery, every time they take a bite of bread I made with my own hands, every time they say, "This tastes like home," I'm reminded of something important. Real family is the people who actually want you there. who show up when you're at your lowest, who fight beside you when the world feels impossible. Luke was that for me. Carlos and Maria and Jenny were that. Bethany was that. Even Howard, my lawyer, was that. And Ethan? Maybe one day he'll find his way back to being family again. Maybe not. Either way, I'll be okay. Because I learned that you can survive the worst betrayal and still find joy on the other side. You can lose everything and still rebuild. You can be told you're too old, too weak, too irrelevant, and still prove them wrong. For the first time in 2 years, I felt free. Free from anger, free from fear, free from the need for anything except this: fresh dough under my hands, the morning sun through the windows, and the knowledge that I'd told the truth when lying would have been easier. Some stories don't have happy endings, but they can have honest ones. This is mine.